Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I am back. I'm back with a brand new What If. I was debating with doing either part 2 of the Kryptonian Naruto or just starting a new What If, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start a new What If because I'm bored and whatever. My day's been kind of jumbled, so I'm recording this kind of later in the day. Normally I have it out, and it's out already. It's 11 p.m. right now. It's probably gonna be out, or like at least it's gonna be starting premiere at least normal time, but it's gonna be done around like 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. I mean, nonetheless, this is a brand new What If. What if Deku was a Quirkless Prodigy? And this is kind of a nod toward like this thing that's been going on in my community, and we've been talking about it a lot, and I've been talking to other people a lot about a kind of like me saying that Deku didn't deserve One for All thing, and I've talked to my friends about it, and I know there's a lot of My Hero Academia fans that get mad at me when I say that. And this is going to be like a combination of that and some other things as well. I just didn't want to make a Deku What If that it was like, what if Deku wasn't dumb, or what if Deku actually trained? So I thought it would be fun to call it What If Deku was a Quirkless Prodigy. So yeah, if you enjoy, make sure to leave a like, a sub, and a comment down below, all that good stuff. And if you're liking the new thumbnails, I think they're cool. I make them myself, by the way. No one else makes them, but I think this style is pretty slick. I mean, it's there, you know, it's a combination of kind of what I've been doing and what I've been trying to do, but yeah, it's hit or miss sometimes, but I'm trying my best. Nonetheless, I hope y'all enjoy, and let's just get right into the What If. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya is different in this timeline. Izuku Midoriya realizes at a very young age when he goes into the doctors with his mother and he hears the words that himself is quirkless. He realizes that there is more that he can do. He realizes that there's so much that he can do personally to actually become stronger instead of just, well, not doing anything at all. From the age of 5 to basically him being even older, Izuku would start in martial arts. Start in martial arts that would vary. He would even get into basically wrestling. Anything you can really think of that would help you in defending or fighting off attackers, maybe even sustaining villains, he began to learn. Wrestling was a beautiful art for him, especially allowing him to control certain limbs and allow him to basically subdue somebody without getting extremely hurt. And he would, on top of that, would combine that with his judo and also his jiu-jitsu skills. Soon he would get into more stuff like karate, hand-to-hand combat type of deal, and he would grow more and more. It was insane. His mother would think that he must have a quirk. He must have some fast learning quirk. He must have some prodigies, something. He doesn't. It's confirmed later on that he definitely does not have a quirk. Izuku is some sort of quirkless prodigy. Frankly, his mother is excited to see that someone quirkless like Izuku can do this, can be strong. Izuku would continue on with his training, continue on with learning martial arts and exercising and stuff like that, all the way until he's about 12. Remember, he can't do anything too crazy. I mean, he's not going to be doing some weight training or anything like that. That doesn't make sense for a kid his age. But learning techniques and stuff like that is definitely warranted. After a while of just flat out getting more or less bullied in his school, people started realizing to not mess around with Izuku Midoriya. People would try to throw punches at him, kicks, anything to basically make fun of him. They throw their bags at him and even try to just bully him verbally. Izuku would either ignore them or they get flipped on their back immediately when they tried to even hurt him. Izuku was out of the league of all these people. Even Bakugo would see this and get kind of frustrated, wondering how he would be able to do such a thing. And when they're about 12 years old, Bakugo would approach him, asking in his own little furious tone about how he got so strong. Izuku would just explain that he's been doing martial arts all his life now, after they told him that he was, well, quirkless, and he felt useless and everybody called him that. He decided to do something about it. Bakugo, hearing this, is in a way frustrated, but at the same time respects Izuku for that. From here on out, Bakugo isn't going to be bullying Izuku. He's going to see him as someone that he needs to make sure he's stronger than. He can't let some quirkless, quote-unquote, prodigy keep up with him when he's doesn't have the blessing of a quirk itself. So this even gets Bakugo to start training his quirk a little bit earlier. Of course, Bakugo will be limited in that training. I mean, he can't really do much. And of course, you would get in trouble if you get caught using your quirk. But Izuku would have no limits for that. Izuku can continue training his body, continue training his martial arts, anything he can possibly do. He began at the age of 13 to 14 getting into different tournaments, events. If that was a kickboxing event, something simple with heavy padding, he's not going to get in the ring with any MMA fighters, even though he probably could and beat a couple amateurs, but he's not going to do stuff like that. He wants to do everything at the, the more amateur-ish and kid-ish level, because he feels that there's no reason to risk anything too crazy. And he's done some spars with some older people, some basically world champion future world champion like caliber fighters, and of course they're still ironing out their difficulties, but Izuku can somewhat hang in there. I'm not going to act like he's going to go beat a world champion by any means, but when you have someone like a prodigy like Izuku, he can definitely keep toe. He enters wrestling events still. He enters jiu-jitsu events, judo, anything you can really think of he's done and will do in the future. Izuku continues on this path and is basically a force to be reckoned with. And someone we all know very well would actually be scouting him and would be extremely interested in Izuku. Aizawa, the one we know as their future sensei of Class 1A, would actually hear of this young boy. Through the grapevine of everything, people would talk about this quirkless boy that would be storming through the events. Yes, there are quirks in this judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all of this. There are quirks that are involved. So some people are larger than others because of their quirk, or maybe someone has larger hands or a different foot size or something like that. All of these are advantages to a certain extent. But he hears about this young boy who's quirkless, and they call him the Prodigy. He seems to be just completely destroying everybody. Everybody at his age group would get annihilated, and most people in the adult age group would get beat as well. Some people that have been doing it for 25, 30 years even call him this accelerated prodigy, that what he's gotten out of 2 years, they've gotten out of 10 years. That's how good Izuku is. Aizawa would eventually go to one of Izuku's wrestling matches, seeing Izuku just dominate the competition with his flawless technique. This kid, he's not only a prodigy, but he's textbook. He knows every ins and in and out, but not only that, he puts his own twists on everything. He puts his own little stamp. It's as if he knows that doing everything by the book isn't the best way of going about it. If it says to kick a certain way, you should add your own thing to that. Make that kick even better. Aizawa would eventually walk up to the young boy, walk up to Izuku Midoriya, and Izuku knows who exactly Aizawa is. He's a big fan of Eraserhead and even goes to shake his hand. Aizawa shakes his hand and Aizawa questions, "Kid, are you, actually quirkless?" "Oh, yes, I am. Why do you ask?" Aizawa is kind of shocked. He's kind of surprised that this kid is actually quirkless. He was kind of under the impression that maybe, just maybe, it was some sort of joke. Maybe his quirk was kind of limited. Maybe it was a quirk that would never be seen. But if he's actually quirkless, that's pretty impressive. He even questions why they call him the Prodigy, and he kind of just shakes his head and says that he really shouldn't have that nickname. He's not that good. There's some people in here that are better. But Aizawa points out that these people have had 35 years on him. There's a big difference, and they're grown men, grown females, grown people. Like, it's ridiculous. Aizawa pointing this out, Izuku kind of scratches the back of his head and asks him as calm as possible and in not a conflict way, about why he's even there. And Aizawa says that he's doing, I guess, a little bit of scouting. And Aizawa explains that he is the first year teacher for UA High School. In which Izuku, hearing this, is extremely excited. There's no way, really? Oh, I want to go to UA. And of course Aizawa smiles at this and nods, saying that he definitely has the tools to do so. Even though he's quirkless, he might be able to get by with it. There's some tests that might be a little bit more difficult, but if he's smart, he passes the written exam, and he approaches the practical exam properly, there's a good chance he can get into Class 1A. And if it's not, he'll probably get into Class 1B. Frankly, there's some people that don't really, have amazing quirks anyways, so they'll get in. But nonetheless, Izuku definitely has a chance. Izuku thanks Aizawa for the bout of confidence, thanking him for a little bit of advice that he would eventually give him, and they would basically say their farewells. But Aizawa has a hidden agenda. Aizawa knows about something that Izuku and the basically entirety of the world doesn't. That's All Might. All Might and his powers. Aizawa would immediately go to All Might and tell him that he found somebody. He found somebody that he may want to consider. And of course, All Might would question who this boy is and who this person is. But Aizawa would say give him a couple years. He's still young, but once he's ready to try out to go for the entrance exam, he needs to meet him. This boy might be something else. He seems to be quirkless, but he truly is what they say he is. Aizawa goes to walk away, and All Might questions, "What do they say he is?" "A prodigy." Immediately, All Might is shocked to hear this. A quirkless prodigy? How is that possible? He doesn't know. He wants to know for himself. He wants to figure this out, but he won't really know. Izuku would continue on and continue his training, and eventually he'd actually decide to head to UA itself to check out what they call the UA Sports Festival. During this time, we have various other students basically showing off their talents. He sees a young boy by the name of Mirio Togata, and it seems that he has some permeation like quirk. He's able to go through things, but he seems to be, struggling with it. Izuku watches on as various other students go about their entire class. We have Mirio, we have Tamaki, we have Nejire, we have various other people that will eventually be in their third year when Izuku is there. During a bit of a break though, Izuku would actually go down and begin to walk around and trying to meet these students, eventually coming across that boy, Mirio, the one that lost all his clothing. He walks up to Mirio and taps him on the shoulder and asks if he can get a proper handshake. He does just that, and Izuku looks him up and down. "Your quirk, it's interesting, extremely interesting." And Izuku begins to actually relay some ideas with Mirio. "See, your quirk, I assume it's all about concentration, correct?" And Mirio immediately says yes, that it's like a sequence of events. Izuku then flat out basically says all the things that Mirio was going to say before he said it. He even gives him some tips, maybe some ideas that he could try and use to utilize his quirk. That yes, the whole clothes thing may be an issue, but if everything is based around focus, he might be able to make those clothes stick in a way. But maybe not necessarily stick, but also go permeate with him. Izuku begins to explain this and tries to get some logic behind it. Of course, this is extremely difficult. Izuku doesn't have the quirk. He may be smart, but he's not some super genius. But Mirio takes that to heart, takes some good advice, and even asks the boy his name. He says that his name is Izuku Midoriya, and Mirio is shocked to hear this and points at him. "You're the one Aizawa was talking about." Aizawa? Oh, yeah, Eraserhead. Yeah, he was, wow, that's definitely something. Izuku is kind of in awe at the fact that a hero was talking about him. But, you know, I mean, he must be pretty confident about scouting Izuku if that's the case. Another person would come running over, and it's actually Nejire Hado, telling Mirio that the next event is about to begin. She introduces herself to Izuku, and Izuku does the same in his normal awkward fashion, of course not really knowing who these people are, and he even compliments her quirk, saying that it's extremely impressive and gives her some insights. She compliments how intelligent he really is and looks forward to hopefully seeing him at UA, especially because that must be the reason why he's kind of out and about watching what's going on. Izuku nods and says that he'll definitely be here, and that's a promise. Izuku waves them all goodbye and says he has to leave early, but wishes them all good luck on any events coming up soon, in which Izuku leaves, and the two of them are in complete awe that he's extremely smart, but he also basically takes extreme amounts of, well, you could say, enjoyment in learning new things, enjoyment in perfecting new things. That's just who Izuku is, and that's just how he's been all his life. Izuku would eventually head home, deal with some things. Obviously, he still has school, but school's never been a problem for Izuku by any means. He gets through school relatively easily, and a couple more years would pass, and it'd be finally time for that last day of middle school. He would be speaking or watching the teacher speak, and the teacher would say that, you know, he would tell them that they would maybe take a job request test or something, but of course he knows that they all want to go the hero route. He throws all the papers in the sky, and everyone begins to cheer and use their quirks, except for Bakugo and Izuku. I mean, of course Izuku doesn't really have a quirk, so he wouldn't be able to use one anyways, but you know what I'm saying. Nonetheless, the teacher kind of explains that they actually have two people trying out for UA, and that's Katsuki Bakugo, who he believes will definitely get in, and Izuku Midoriya. But the teacher is a little skeptical about Izuku, and everybody else is as well. Either they're haters, or they're just kind of, well, not liking the fact that he's quirkless. And frankly, it's kind of whatever for Izuku. He's been working all his life for this, and if he can't make it and he can't get into UA, that's fine. He'll go to a different hero school and beat out whoever's there and get better and better, and then eventually he'll become a pro hero. He's gonna prove it to himself. He's gonna prove that he can do it. And obviously, at the state he is right now, it's gonna be a struggle. Yes, he may know martial arts. Yes, he may be advanced in almost everything he's known so far. But when we're talking about getting into UA, we know what's up and coming, especially with the practical. The practical is going to be a little bit more difficult. But Izuku's been thinking about that. There might be more to the practical than, well, face value. Izuku would shut that idea off while he's listening to the teacher, but eventually they would all be done and allowed to leave. Bakugo would approach Izuku, telling him that he shouldn't really budge on trying to go to UA, he should just go to a second grade school to just make sure he can limit the humiliation. Izuku pats him on the shoulder. It's all good, I understand you don't want competition, but unfortunately you will be getting it, because I promise, if I go, you are not getting first in that exam. Izuku smiles toward Bakugo, knowing how to get under his skin, and just walks away. Izuku ready to just head off to his classes once again to get ready. He wants to continue his training, and he's going to ramp up his training tenfold to make sure that he's ready for this exam. While he's walking home, he's studying his journal. As he heads under a bridge, he looks through quirk after quirk, learning more and more, and even sees what he wrote down about some of the third year or the future third year students, which he wrote about 2-3 years ago or something like that. He looks through it, seeing Nejire Hado and the explanation of her quirk, and even seeing Mirio and the explanation of his quirk. He wonders how strong they are now. He hasn't really been keeping up very much, but assuming how or the potential that their quirks have, he's sure that they're definitely at the top of the entire school. Izuku begins to close his notebook, and he begins to hear rumbling beneath him. Immediately he runs toward the exit, sliding and almost reaching the exit as he turns around. He sees a giant villain blast out of the sewer. It's the Sludge villain. Kid, I need your body. I didn't know he was here. Izuku is confused. What the hell is this guy even talking about? The Sludge villain charges at Izuku at insane speeds, and Izuku immediately runs out of basically the little underneath of the bridge. He tries to evade the Sludge villain as much as possible, but his foot gets grabbed. Immediately, Izuku slides out of his shoe, stumbling his way away as fast as possible, trying to get away. He begins climbing up the wall, bouncing off each wall to the side, and trying to climb and just evade the Sludge villain as much as possible. He boosts over the Sludge villain and even throws his bag straight at one of his eyes. He kind of slips into the Sludge villain's goo though and falls on the ground, and he slightly hits his head on the ground, putting him in some sort of daze. But just as the Sludge villain is about to capitalize off of it, it seems like Izuku is going to be okay, because he stalled just enough time for the one and only symbol of peace, All Might, to arrive. Izuku looks to his right to see All Might blast out of the manhole cover and use a signature Detroit smash. All Might smashes the Sludge villain into the wall as he splatters everywhere, Izuku rubbing the back of his head as he looks up toward All Might and slings himself up. He looks at him and runs over. All Might, I'm your biggest fan. It's a pleasure to meet you. Well, thanks for also saving me. Izuku kind of laughs at this, and All Might asks if he can help him out clean this thing up. And of course, Izuku would, asking for an autograph eventually, and All Might would sign in his own All Might way, which is kind of not a signature. It's kind of just putting All Might in big letters. But nonetheless, it's still a signature. And he would then ask All Might a couple questions, and eventually would bring up this one question Izuku's been wanting to ask. And All Might questions what it is, and he asks if someone who's quirkless can, be a hero. All Might then begins to remember. All his memories begin to rush in. He knows who this is. This is Izuku Midoriya, the one that Aizawa scouted years ago. This is... oh my god. He realizes it and says that being quirkless will make things extremely difficult. And it's going to be a sacrifice. And you may die in the line of fire. But any hero could die in the line of fire. As long as you feel comfortable with trying to save people, even though you are at this substantial limitation, you should go and do that. But it's all up to you. All Might points at him and nods as he's about to jump off, and he waits for his response. Izuku stands his ground and says that even if he can save one person, it will be worth it. Izuku smiles as All Might jumps off, and All Might realizes then and there, well, it seems like this kid truly is, well, worth one for all, and is definitely deserving of it. Izuku would begin to head home, but just as he does, it seems like something's happening in the far distance. It seems like that bottle that All Might had, unfortunately fell out, and someone is trapped within the Sludge villain. Izuku begins running over to see someone he knows, someone that is his rival, someone that's, at the end of the day, is his friend. Katsuki Bakugo is stuck within the Sludge villain. Izuku immediately grabs some things out of his bag and goes sprinting past the caution tape, past the other pro heroes that are doing jack squats. They're doing nothing. But who is watching as all this unfolds? All Might himself. He saw this occurring and realized he can't do anything about it, but he'll definitely get some motivation to do something when he sees the future of Hero Society charging into the line of fire without hesitation. Izuku dashing in, throwing pencil after pencil toward the eyes of the Sludge villain, trying to allow Katsuki Bakugo to break free. He does anything in his power. Maybe he can light it on fire. Maybe he can do something. He immediately grabs some fire hose, or at least breaks off a part of this hydrant and tries to spray it with water. That maybe if that doesn't work, maybe he'll try something else. He tries anything you can think of. He's literally trying anything his brain can even come up with, but eventually he would get partially caught. But just as he gets caught, someone flies over the area. And who is it? It's All Might. All Might winds back his punch and sends it flying into the Sludge villain, blasting it apart once again as if it was deja vu. Immediately, Izuku sees what occurred and is happy. But, of course, he gets lectured by the other pro heroes, but he just walks away. He just leaves, thinking that's, what are they gonna do? It's not like he used his quirk to do anything. Definitely wasn't illegal. He might have put himself in danger, but hey, that's not illegal. Izuku would just head home after helping Bakugo, and Bakugo would eventually show up, saying that he owes him nothing, that he doesn't care, that it doesn't matter if he tried to save him or saved him or whatever, it doesn't matter. He owes him nothing, and he'll make sure to beat him nonetheless in the entrance exam. Bakugo scoffs and begins to leave, and Izuku kind of just smiles, knowing that Bakugo is appreciative in his own, Bakugo way. He continues to walk, and out of nowhere, someone just jumps in front of him. And guess who? It's All Might. All Might reaches his hand out, and then out of nowhere shrinks. Izuku begins to kind of panic, but then quickly is explained what's going on. And the reason why All Might, wants to speak with him, it's because he wants him to have the power of, one for all. Izuku is shocked to hear this. He's been quirkless all his life. He's been pushing himself to basically be the best, even though he doesn't have a quirk. He's been pushing himself to be the strongest, even without a quirk. And now All Might is telling him that he can have a quirk, that he can have the power of someone he's been idolizing. He can have such power that can open up pathways that he wouldn't even believe. All Might smiles toward Izuku and asks if he's ready to take that leap. It's going to be a leap of faith, but he wants to know if he's ready. Izuku reaches out for his hand and shakes it, saying that he wants the quirk and he'll make sure to make him proud. All Might smiles and says that, they'll have to do a little bit of training. Of course, he's in pretty good shape right now, but his martial arts is really good, but his body is not, at least not tip-top. So All Might wants to make sure that's the case. And to do that, he says to meet him at Dagobah Beach at 5 p.m. Izuku would tell his mother about what occurred, not specifically of course, but it said that he's going to start training and blah blah blah, and that's what he's going to do. Eventually leading him to heading to Dagobah Beach, and when he arrives there, All Might explains exactly the training regimen, cleaning up the entirety of the beach. Izuku would struggle a bit, and of course anybody would, but he would actually get it done about half as soon, or in about 5 months. Izuku would be shredded to the bone, and on top of that, he is an extremely good martial artist. After about 5 months, All Might says that, this is perfect. Now he'll be able to take on the quirk and hopefully learn how to use it within this time period. Izuku is then given a strand of his hair, and Izuku looks at it in complete disgust. Ugh, I forgot you said this. This is disgusting. Izuku eats the hair, and eventually the quirk would activate about, an hour or two later. When it activates, Izuku begins to try and use it. He activates One for All in his entire body and can feel the power that's insane. But he realizes something. He feels that he can't even move. If he moves, he might destroy part of his body, in which All Might shakes his head. You are right, that might occur. Izuku just shakes his head and begins to think, what if I treat this like sparring? In which All Might is confused. What is that even supposed to mean? All Might hasn't really, he's done training and stuff, but sparring, come on, he obviously do some more explanation. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. Izuku explains that in sparring, you don't go 100%. You never do. If you go 100%, you're kind of an asshole. You never go 100% in sparring. You're trying to get a feel for each other, maybe get some work in. That's the whole goal, especially if you're sparring toward the end of a camp for basically fighting somebody or, anything, wrestling matches, stuff like that. You don't go full speed at the end of a camp. Azuku thinks of it the same way. Maybe he can go 5%. Maybe he can go 3%. Something, maybe. What if that's what he can do? He looks at All Might and asks if they could do a little bit of sparring. All Might says, yeah, of course, but he'll have to hold back. Azuku smiles and says, exactly. Azuku lines himself up, ready to fight All Might, and as the sparring begins, Azuku lands punches without breaking his bones. Nothing breaks. It seems like Azuku has picked up on something. He can use something known, well, he doesn't even know, but it's something known as full cowling. He's using it currently at 5%, but he can feel that he can definitely ramp it up more and more. He ramps it up to about 15%, and he feels like this is a good place to stop, at least for now, until he gets some more training with the quirk. He realizes that there's just so much space to improve with, but at the same time, everything will slow down. He understands, quote unquote, how the quirk works, but he needs to know more and more. After about another 5 months of training, Azuku has One For All down to about 30 to 35%. You could even argue that it might be even more, but let's just say 35%. And Azuku can feel that there is even more power within One For All that they don't even know. Azuku brings this up to All Might, asking if he has any other special abilities that, well, he doesn't know about. And All Might says no. Like, what is he talking about? He's kind of confused. But Azuku does come to the conclusion eventually that there might be a chance that the other quirks of One For All, the other One For All users, might be within him. Azuku brings it up to All Might, and All Might is shocked. How is that? Is that even true? Could that be? I mean, obviously Azuku doesn't know for sure. It's just a theory. I mean, he doesn't know, but nonetheless, it's definitely something to think about. But with that said, the 10 months are over. His studying is complete, and he's ready for the UA entrance exam. He eventually would go, and when he would arrive, he'd bump into somebody, almost falling, but luckily catching himself with a simple backspring. He looks, and it's someone familiar. Helping her up, he questions why she's here. It's Nejire Hado. And she explains that she's actually here to watch the entrance exam, in which Azuku smiles and says, well, hopefully they can put on a bit of a show. Then out of nowhere, Nejire realizes, this is Azuku Midoriya. She met him, or she basically says, like, it's nice to meet him again. She realizes that, well, obviously they've met before, and it was a couple years ago, but still, it's been a while. And Azuku is happy that she recognized him and says that it's definitely a pleasure, and it seems like she's gotten a lot stronger. And Nejire nods and says that she could say the same thing for him, and she wishes him good luck and says that all of the teachers and everybody are definitely going to be watching him because they've heard a lot. Azuku smiles and says that he hopes he doesn't disappoint as he walks away and gets ready for the first part of the exam, which is the written. President Mike would eventually talk and eventually allow them to do the written, in which Azuku feels pretty confident that he passed with flying colors. Now for the real test, the practical. What's the practical going to be? And he learns that it's a bunch of robots, and he begins to write down stuff in a small journal that he has, and he puts it away. And eventually President Mike gets a whole thing with Tenya Ida, but that all doesn't really matter very much. Eventually leading to the practical exam. Azuku would wait outside and get ready to just straight up go. As right when the gates swing open, Azuku goes sprinting out at 35% of One For All. Just touching one of the robots, he obliterates one. He smiles and begins sprinting around at insane speeds. Everybody else is shocked. Not only completely shocked, people are questioning basically why he went without go. And President Mike says there are no countdowns in a real battle. Azuku would just begin to obliterate one after another. Every single robot itself would get just destroyed. Eventually, he feels that he had enough points. He feels good. He feels like he'll definitely beat Bakugo. And just as he's sitting there waiting, he thinks about the 0-pointer. Isn't there supposed to be like some big robot that's like no points? Where the heck is that thing? Just as he says this, the 0-pointer comes to play. Izuku decides that it might be best for him to just take off, sliding down this building or part of a building that he's on, more like a little balcony or ledgeway. And he begins to leave, but just as he does, he hears the scream of a girl that is stuck under rubble. He realizes that this is something All Might would want him to do. Make a stamp. Save people no matter what. All Might himself is currently watching and wonders what Izuku will do. And that's exactly what Izuku's going to do, what All Might would do. Izuku goes charging in to help the girl. He punches the robots, but only forces it to stagger back slightly. Izuku realizes there's only a couple options. He jumps up at 100% and shatters the robot into pieces and makes it collapse, or the girl gets crushed. He tries to brainstorm anything else, and he gets frustrated with himself. He tries to punch the robot back more and more. He begins to punch it, a flurry of punches, punching it back more and more, but it's obviously gaining more and more ground toward the girl. As the foot is about to step on her, Izuku contemplates just smashing it entirely to the side, and as he's about to do this, he winds back his hand. But just as he winds back his hand, this odd black rope appears within it. He's shocked, but he realizes something. He brought this up to All Might. There are other quirks within One for All. It might be a theory, but if it's true, Izuku might be able to maintain and actually use them. Izuku throws his hand out as all of these black whips go spiraling out of it. A ton of them. They wrap around the robot's legs, body, arms, head. Izuku grabs it and with 35% of One for All pulls back. Not only does the robot fall back itself, but the front side of it gets crushed entirely with this black whip. Smashing into the ground, Izuku retracts it back into his arm and looks at his hands. Where the hell did that thing come out of me? It's like some webbing. Am I a spider now? Black spider? How does that even work? Is it rope? What is it? Izuku is all confused, but he realizes that the girl is still on the ground. So he runs over, helping her out, and basically immediately getting her to Recovery Girl to get healed up and all of that. In which everybody is still shocked at what Izuku just did. What kind of power does this kid have? All of the teachers, on the other hand, are smiling. This kid, he truly is something else. All Might looks at Aizawa and nods, and even gives him a little bit of a handshake, thanking him, saying that this boy right here has the potential to truly be the next #1 hero. And that is going to be a wrap for part 1 of What If Deku Was a Quirkless Prodigy. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, a sub, and a comment down below, all that good stuff. Some of you might be thinking, oh, well, he doesn't stay quirkless? Yeah, no. I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, if he was initially a quirkless prodigy, so now he's, I guess, just a prodigy, but he technically at one point was a quirkless prodigy, so the title's not wrong. But nonetheless, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope all of y'all have an amazing day. Later. Always what's left.